Okay, welcome back to another SDRS Confessions, and we always just dive right into it. We have Piers today. Piers, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into the confession.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Piers. I've worked at Cognism for 9 months now. I'm a senior enterprise SDR, and I have a confession that's not too embarrassing, but hopefully will prove as a good way, a good means of mistakes.
So everyone's at the edge of their seats. They're tuning in. They're trying to find out what is your confession. So Piers, tell us, what is your SDR confession?
So basically, I obviously as SDRs we dial like crazy, especially when you're faced with the notoriously difficult month of December, and in a sort of little moment of madness, I decided to call a prospect in the US. I think she's based in California, and it was 7:41 a.m. So she had a demo of the platform. We were waiting for her to come back to us with feedback from a data test. And she just sort of started ghosting me for a while. So I gave her a call. Didn't pay enough attention to the local time on outreach, and yeah, she sent me a message eventually after a little bit of ghosting, explaining that she wasn't too pleased to have been woken up by my call at 6 a.m. Although I must stress that it was actually 7:41 a.m. I double checked, I triple checked the activity. It wasn't too early. I don't think it was much of a wake up call, but probably a little bit too early to call somebody, I guess, if most people are starting work at 8 or 8:30.
I mean, look, it sounds like it was a decent alarm clock. I have some alarm clock sounds that are terrible, so at least it wasn't absolutely awful. It sounds like across the board. So what happened from there? You called her, like, was it? Did you call her back ever again? Like, what happened from there?
Yeah, so she didn't pick up the time that I supposedly sort of woke her up. She then to ghost me for a while, as I say, and I called her a couple more times, and then eventually, after trying to reach her on LinkedIn, she responded saying that she wasn't interested at this stage. That it might sort of circle back in a couple of months, but for now, it wasn't a great time, and that she didn't appreciate me waking her up with an early call. So, I mean, the thing is, like, I've obviously read online that the best time to call a sort of senior sales leader tends to be before they start work. So I've heard that 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is a good time to call, and I was only 19 minutes short of that. So but maybe I should start building into my pitch that Cognism sell phone numbers, email addresses, and wake up calls.
That might be a new pitch. I don't know. Like, might be one. Might need to create it. So this is really interesting. We'll dive into some learning lessons here from this confession. I think this something that you mentioned. I have told people to do as well. I've also done myself when I'm at SDR or when I'm doing any calling. I've called before 8, and I found people at the time was pre-COVID, so people were commuting, they were going somewhere, so you could catch them in the car or going into the office, so it wasn't as bad. I think now a lot of people are maybe staying in a little bit more because they can just get up, walk 5 steps, they're at their desk, now they're working. So they're like, oh, you woke me up because I don't have to wake up as early because I don't have to commute. So that's just something that I tell people now to consider. Like, if calling at, like, we used to call it like 7 a.m. and we would get people commuting, but now it's like people are probably asleep and then they're grumpy, right? So maybe call them at like right at 8, right? But everything's an A/B test because some people might even be up earlier than that. So I guess let's dive into some learning lessons here. I think like number one learning lesson is calling people now maybe at 8 o'clock. Have you changed that now, or are you still calling people before 8? And you think that was just a fluke scenario?
Well, because of the time difference, obviously, I only have between about 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. to call California. So I'm not going to promise Morgan that I will stop calling at 7:41 a.m. I think
Piers
it's
is still
definitely
gonna
a good
call
idea.
y'all.
There's no stopping me. Sales never sleeps. But no, I think I'll definitely pay more attention to the local time zone. It was obviously just because I was like absolutely powering through, making about $100 a day, and so I wasn't really paying attention too much attention to each individual call, and so maybe called a tad early. But as I say, we've because of the time difference being 8 hours. Behind they are, so we only really have like 4 till 5. If we have an afternoon meeting as well, then there's very limited time for us to catch California. And being a software salesperson, it's a lot of companies are based there, are headquartered there, or have offices there. So it's a region that we still have to target. We still have to cold call. I guess we just got to pick our moments.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing that you did as well Well, actually, before we go into that, I'm actually curious. Have you noticed, this was one scenario. Have you noticed though that when you do make those calls at that time, because again, you're only going to get at between an AR time difference, it's a big difference. That you've been getting more pickups when you call earlier. Have you just like noticed that compared to maybe some other people who may stay later and call at that time?
Yeah, 100%. So I actually find the best times to call are, just before the start of the working day, or just as it started. And unless they have like a sales kickoff meeting, then it's likely that they won't have like internal meetings, so they're more likely to pick up. Whether the call disposition is going to be as positive, that's it's up
Yeah,
to us to
story for
maybe
another.
test.
Yeah.
And then the afternoons work as well. So I find that calling after 5, and sometimes when I stay in the office until like 6:30 or so, that's when I actually have the best pickup rates. And sometimes you'll catch people on their way home from work, and if they've had a good day, then the call disposition could be as positive as ever. So yeah, I think early morning and late afternoon is actually quite a good shout.
Okay, awesome. And so you are seeing success there. We had an outlier scenario where one person was like, "Wait, what's going on?" I know that in that story, you had sent a video as well. So tell us about that video.
Yes, so after little bit of the ghosting, I basically sent a vidyard. Well, sorry, after she responded via LinkedIn saying that she wasn't best pleased that I, woke her up with my early cold call, I sent her a vidyard basically saying Happy New Year and sorry for having called you so early. Explained that December's a difficult month for SDRs as we're trying to hit target when people are as unresponsive as ever, and then left it with her. So it's actually ongoing. It's still, we're still to soon to find out what will be the outcome of all of this. But hopefully she'll appreciate my persistence.
And I like how I actually I was cracking up with the video because it's funny, but the thing is like with the video in itself, because I say that y'all because we got a chance to see the video beforehand. If you want it, I guess Piers might be able to send it to you, but it was funny, but also at the same time it showed like just being human. I think a lot of times when you do make a mistake, like calling someone early, it wakes up on their or their whatever their bedtime or whatever, they're like, oh, this sucks, like this is terrible, and like no, that's like not the case. It doesn't always have to be that way, and you could still be able to get through. And what I'm saying all this because you sent a video to apologize and also to answer that objection, right? Not interested. When did you start doing that? And when did you get the confidence to start doing that? Because I tell people to do it all the time and they're like, I don't want to do it. I'm scared. I'm nervous. You seem to be in this scenario to not be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I basically am one of those cheeky SDRs that never takes no as an answer. I see a no as a challenge, in fact. So every time somebody tells me that it's not the right time, their budget's frozen, etc., I'll just fire back some objection handles and try and sort of tackle it as best I can. I think, yeah, when I joined Cognism 9 months ago, Rachel Goldson was my onboarding manager, and she was the one who first taught me to never take no as an answer until it's perhaps three no's from three different DMs or the same DM three times. At which stage probably to leave it a couple of months and then go back all guns blazing. But yeah, I think in that scenario, the best thing was to just perhaps send her a LinkedIn and not have called her repetitively. So I think I maybe misread my audience on this occasion. But yeah, definitely wouldn't I wouldn't I wouldn't say that like the takeout from this is that I need to be less persistent. I think just being sort of pleasantly persistent is something that's really sort of appreciated and respected in the sales world.
I love that you said that. I say that to people all the time, is being pleasantly persistent. I think when people think of the word persistent, they immediately think annoying. And no, you don't have to be annoying. You can do it in a pleasant way, in a thoughtful way. And sometimes along the way, yeah, people are gonna be like, I'm not interested, or that's not for me, or you may get some pushback. That's part of the game though. Like you're not gonna be in this role and not have those pushbacks. It's just acknowledging that, okay, it didn't work that time, apologize, and move on to where you need to go.
Absolutely.
When you, so we're thinking about we did talk about the video and the follow up. We talked about, okay, being more thought, maybe making sure that when you're making those calls, like, okay, maybe, okay, we don't want to do it so early, but we still want to A/B test and see where it goes from there. When you're looking at this confession as well, is there a different introduction that you use because you know it's earlier, or do you stick with the same thing?
It's a good question. I think I would just stick with the same thing, to be honest. I might throw in like I hope you're having if it's a Monday morning, I
Mm.
might wish them a great start to the week. Often people say like I hope you've had a great weekend, but I don't. I'm a bit of a forwardist, so I prefer to sort of wish them like a productive and great and positive week. But no, I think in terms of just like day to day, I think my morning pitch is probably the same as my afternoon pitch. Yeah.
You said this something that's
What would you
interesting.
recommend?
So this is interesting. So you mentioned how they said the wake up, like basically you woke me up early or whatever. I will say this, but your tone has to be on point for this. I'd be like, congrats, this is a cold call on your alarm clock. And then I'll just pause. And then so some people don't like that and they're like, wait, what? But most people laugh. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna keep riding with this and just see where it goes. So I used to be like, yeah, congrats, this is a cold call and this is your alarm clock, pause. And then it'd be like, wait, what do you want? And then, we laugh and then we would go into it. So that's the one that I use. Again, some stuff that I use, it's probably just what I personally would use. I don't think that would work in some places for sure, especially some personas that wouldn't work. It just, just look at what you're doing and understand that. But personally, like, that's what I like to do because, like, I already know it's early and, like, we already know it's a cold call. So I just like calling things out and like making them more crazy or outlandish. So then you laugh at it. So then we can just move on and like talk about what we need to talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's definitely one to keep in mind. I might try it.
Try it, see where it goes. Maybe you have to come back for a confession, be like, hey Morgan, you told me to do this, and like they were not happy. So like, I don't know. But that is a route that you can go. And you mentioned something in there. You said you're a forwardist because I think a lot of people that are SDRs, they want to be really nice. They don't want to step on people's toes. They don't want to mess up things up. But you're like, no, I'm forward. I want to get in it. I love that. So I guess my question to you is, have you always been that way? Is that something you had to learn? Talk to me.
No, I think when I started out, I was really, really polite and almost like too respectful of the prospect's time.
Mm.
And then I started finding a lot more success when I was quite direct with them and blasé. Not necessarily telling them that. Not sort of calling them and being like, "Hey, this is your alarm clock," but along those lines, just being blasé, sort of being able to make self-deprecating jokes, I think works a treat in software sales because they understand the game. They don't want people just calling them up with the same pitch every time and sending the same LinkedIn messages like, "Hey, you might be interested in our software. Have you got 15 minutes next week?" You got to mix it up a little bit. You got to be blasé. You got to be upfront. And once I noticed that was like that I was having a lot more success booking meetings by doing that, by being direct and blasé, and a little bit cheeky. And sort of I guess the other thing is to acknowledge that like our time is valuable as well. It's not just the prospect's time that we have to respect. We should
Absolutely.
respect our own time. So we can't just like always work around their schedules, otherwise we just wouldn't get anywhere. But yeah, since I noticed that, I sort of doubled down on it and decided to be a little bit cheekier, but then still pleasant, still polite, still respectful, obviously. But just with a twist, I guess, with a comedic twist.
so I agree with that. You have to be able to be direct but not rude is the way I always put it. Right? If you can be direct and be rude and it's not going to go far, but you can be direct and still be kind to some degree and still be that person. And sales is interesting, especially being an SDR. Like you change very quickly. You realize that, okay, like most people are trying to waste my time. Some people are lying to me. Like, how do I be direct so they like stop doing this to me? And you got to be able to ask the right questions, do the right things so that you evade that. But you also said you have a comedic twist. Are you a comedian on also as well? Is that another confession you need to tell us? Like, or are you just like, it's just like part of your personality?
Part of my personality, I'd say. Yeah. No, I mean there was another confession that we won't spend too much time going to, but I called this prospect with a referral as well, so I knew that he was the DM, and he said that he was far too busy to look into our technology until the new year. This was a couple of months ago, and I said, "Oh, okay. Is there any reason?" And then he cut me up and said, "Hang on 2 seconds," and then he ordered a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea. I just thought, are you really that busy for the next 2 months that you can't like afford 15 minutes to assess our technology and see its value? Anyway, yeah, it was a funny interaction. I still haven't got hold of him since. I'm gonna one day soon. I'll catch him and I'll ask him how his bacon sandwich was.
Like, I can't think of anything more disrespectful than that. Like, hey, like, I can't check out the software, but I'm gonna take the time to order a bacon sandwich. Like, you clearly have some time. Like, this is absolutely
Yeah,
ridiculous, right? Like,
it's pretty
oh
cheeky.
man, like, prospects are crazy out here. But the thing is, what you mentioned, um, getting back in touch with him, I think bacon sandwich is a good subject line. That should stand out. It's something to try.
Absolutely, yeah. As an email and a LinkedIn, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Even a connection request, literally just put bacon sandwich in the note and like see what happens. Like he might be like,
Yeah,
"Oh, okay, here he comes again." Like, but I think that bacon sandwich and tea, like, yo, I'm on the phone with you. What's going on? Crazy, crazy times we live in.
it would be funny if I caught him at 7:41 a.m. and he's like, "Why are you calling now? It's too early. I'm having my bacon sandwich for breakfast."
That would actually, hey, like call him and then you're like, hey, yep, I just got my bacon sandwich and a breakfast. I got my tea. Thought of you. Wanted to call you. If he doesn't laugh at that, then like I don't know. I've lost faith in being funny. I don't even want to tell you at that point.
Absolutely.
No, I love it, man. So we've covered a good bit. We covered you calling early and the strategy there. We've covered what you've been doing to be more direct. And before we go into the last question, I want to talk about being a little bit direct, a little bit more. Are there ways? This is an interesting question here. Are there things that you do in your personal life to continuously test or iterate being direct in your professional life?
As in, do I sort of like carry things from my personal life into work that I've found work
Yeah,
well?
yeah, like like you find that like with your friends, you've actually started to be more direct, and that's like translated into work, and now it's starting to like mesh where like you're actually just being more direct as a whole. And so I was seeing like, okay, maybe with friends you started to be more direct versus you weren't before because now that's going into that.
Yeah, I guess during the COVID era, it was quite difficult to obviously organize any kind of a social event, and
Hmm.
you'd get loads and loads of maybes. I don't know if you found the same, but so I did
Yep.
find with my friends, where like when obviously when it was legal to when we're trying to group together and see each other. If people said like, "Yeah, I'll try and do that," or "I might be there," I'd often just be very direct with them then, and I'd just say, listen, like, are you actually going to come? If you don't want to come, no problem at all. No hard feelings. I'll move on and move on to the next prospect. Move on to the next friend and ask
Mm,
them if they're available. Because say it's like a weekend away and you want 15 people there. If you have like 10 maybes until the last moment, it's no good. So yeah, definitely with invitations to things, maybe a little bit with dating as well. I mean, it's getting very personal, but
yeah.
I guess like meeting somebody, you definitely want to know whether they like you or not. Time is of the essence in the working world and in the social world. So it perhaps whilst dating, I guess I have been quite direct with people I've dated and wanted them to be direct with me and not mess around with silly games, but just cut to the chase. Like, I'll be a good match. And that definitely carries into work. You want to. It was actually one of the points I wanted to mention in terms of like, yeah, when I pick up new accounts, basically one of the first things I'll do is I'll call 4 or 5 like ICs or sort of sales managers have much better pickup rates than the directors and the VPs,
Mm,
obviously, and because they're close to the ground, they know like what's going on. It's often a good idea to call them and just basically qualify the whole account as a whole.
yeah.
You save so much time if you're calling 4 or 5 people and all 4 of them say like, we do not need contact data, for example, we do not need it right now, or our budget's frozen for 6 months. Then you save so much time by not adding 30, 40 prospects into cadence and then reaching out to all of them only to hear the same thing but like 2 weeks later.
Yep.
So yeah, being direct with like the account sort of more holistically,
Yep.
and qualifying it basically immediately, I found to work really well, which I guess I've sort of, yeah, the directness is something that's built into my personality as well, but it's something that I sort of developed in my professional career as well, as of recently.
I love that last tip that you gave as we wrap up here. And no, we're not going to ask you about your confessions with dating. That's a different episode. But at the end of the day, when it comes to these accounts, I think that's a really good strategy for people to understand that you're calling ICs, you're getting information, you're understanding what's going on, which allows you to be more direct with the account and the people. Hopefully, people can take that tip and can use it for not only as SDRs but in their entire sales career. So, last question we always ask people when they come on is, what is a piece of actionable advice, and it could be something you've already mentioned, but actual advice that you would give to SDRs as they're starting out?
Um, well, I mean, it's going to sound a little bit obvious, but like finding a mold is so important. So obviously, some organizations prefer cold calling, some prefer a sort of email outreach. Most do multi outreach, multi
Mm,
channel outreach rather. I think finding a mold is something that's so important, but in all aspects, because often people find the mold for their intro and pitch, but then oversee like all other aspects, oversee everything else. You need to find your mold with your intro and pitch, obviously with your cold calling technique, but also with your workflow and your time management and your sales admin. See what works for you best. You know, if you prefer keeping your notes offline or online, like see what works for you, and then play to your strengths, right? And I think the number one most important thing, which is pretty actionable, is also to have like your own targets. So obviously you're going to have KPIs, you're going to have activity targets as an SDR that are set by like other people, but you can set your own targets as well. Nothing's stopping you. And I think what I found really useful is going to my manager. If people have been watching the previous episode with Brad, I have the same manager, Orla Pugh. What I found really useful is when Orla and I have our one-to-ones, I'll set my own
mm.
targets. I'll say like, okay, this is what I want to achieve by the end of the week. I want to focus more on these like 5 or 6 really hot accounts. The way I'm going to cut through to them is by sending videos or doing creative outreach or whatever it is. But yeah, so definitely worth considering like finding a mold in all aspects of the SDRing world.
I love that. No, thanks for the advice. Appreciate the breakdown. You already sound like you were giving some love. Any shout outs you want to give before we get out of here?
Definitely to all of you. Yeah,
Yeah,
also
yeah.
to Dave.
Cool.
He's a fantastic manager now, honestly. Because I mean, I don't know if you like a footballing analogy, but I think with SDR managers, they're not too far off football managers, in that they have to manage personalities. You know, sometimes we're known to be uh, uh, sort of princesses, if you like. You know, we complain about
Yeah.
accounts not being good enough or needing a better tech stack, blah blah blah. So sometimes SDR managers have a tough time sort of managing the personalities in the office and ensuring that they're keeping like a positive mindset and a growth mindset, because mentality is definitely the most important sort of aspect of a good SDR. A good SDR that they could be from anywhere, they could be from any background, any like sales experience. They might
Mhm.
not even have sales experience at all, but if you have the right mentality, you will go far.
I agree with that. Mindset is the name of the game. And Pierce, appreciate you sharing all your advice, sharing your confession. And for everyone else, we'll see you on the next SDR Confessions. Have a good one.